Hey, beautiful friends, it's Marnie. Welcome back to the show. Today we are going to be talking about something that everybody can relate to and everybody looks for, the topic of true love. So as a single gal myself, I, for one, am super excited to bring this guest to all of you. Our guest today, Heidi B. Freeman, is an environmental attorney who found herself divorced, and she set out on a mission to find true love. Determined to understand the complexities of relationships, she immersed herself in research, embraced dating, and committed to doing whatever it took to find the right partner. Over a decade, she went on 104 dates, not with 104 different men, and she also interviewed numerous couples, uncovering invaluable lessons that she learned along the way. She's written a wonderful book called Love Lessons, 104 Dates, and the Stories That Led Me to True Love. Today, she's going to share some invaluable lessons about the challenges she faced and ultimately about how she found lasting love with the man who is now her husband. So whether you are single, giving love a second chance, whether you're someone evaluating your current relationship, or you're looking for love for the first time and hoping to find the one, Heidi has some advice and a story that will resonate with all of us. You certainly don't have to be single to learn from some of the lessons in Heidi's book. So stick around, because you're not going to want to miss this. Welcome to this episode of Life is Delicious. I'm Marnie Martin, and I'm so glad you're here. And if this is your first time here, welcome to the Life is Delicious family. This podcast isn't about surviving midlife. It's about crafting your next chapter life, overflowing with purpose, joy, and delicious possibilities. Listen, midlife doesn't have to be a crisis. It can be a beautiful invitation to remember who we are, to rediscover a new version of ourselves, or to completely reinvent our life to reflect who we are becoming now. So if you're tired of being exhausted, living life on autopilot, and putting everyone else first, then you are in the right place. Each week, we'll bring you thought-provoking ideas and practical strategies, as well as inspiration to help you prioritize yourself again. It's time to take back your joie de vivre. So grab a notebook and pen and pop in those earbuds and let's go get it. I don't know about you, but I'm not a fan of over-the-counter pain medications of any kind. But at this stage of life, almost everyone I know is living with some sort of chronic pain, inflammation, joint distress, or injury, not to mention the crazy symptoms that come along with menopause. The Freedom Super Patch is designed to help provide relief from minor aches and pains. It's safe, all-natural, non-invasive, and 100% drug-free, with no ingredients or side effects. Super Patch uses vibro-tactile technology to stimulate the skin's neural response through a unique pattern similar to a QR code that sends signals to the brain and your nervous system to generate less discomfort and stimulate better movement. You can get 25% off your first order at lifeisdelicious.superpatch.com. Give yourself the gift of drug-free pain relief with the Freedom Super Patch. That's lifeisdelicious.superpatch.com for a 25% discount. Welcome, Heidi, to the show. I'm so grateful to have you here.
I am happy to be here, Marnie. Nice to meet you.
It's great to finally get to connect. It's been a little while. We've been trying to put this together, and you have a really interesting story. So I'm super excited to hear how you got started in the process of writing this book. So maybe give our listeners a little bit of background as to how you got here.
Absolutely. So the book actually was born about 15 years ago. I was turning 40 and I was traveling a lot for work. I'm a corporate lawyer and I was on airplanes and I started reading things and thinking about things. And I decided I did not know what love was. I decided, even though that I was divorced, I know you can judge me. I was married already, but I didn't feel like I knew that true love, what that really felt like. And so I started interviewing friends and colleagues and people that I was close to who I felt had very strong relationships and were, quote unquote, in love still. And I took all this data and all these interviews and I would compile them when I was traveling. And I realized, wow, there are themes here that I see throughout all the responses, no matter if I ask the men or the women, or if they're been, same sex or not, or age or not, it was the same themes. And so that's when the book was really born. I wrote the first 8 or so chapters, and then I put it away as I continued to date, and a lot of dating I did do. And I eventually got fixed up with my now husband, who we've been married for 10 years. And several years ago, I found all those notes in the initial 8 chapters. And I said, ooh, it'd be so fun to think about how these themes apply to my current relationship and if they held true. And so that's really how the book was born. And then I decided to merge kind of all of the 104 dates that I went on, that research, and my own experiences to come up with love lessons.
That's amazing. I love that. So did you, at the time when you started dating, obviously you were keeping notes?
So when I started dating, I started a journal. And I didn't take notes on everybody I dated. I just started, I think it was after my 5th or 6th date, I said, I'm going to count. And I don't know why, but I just had a feeling it was going to be a journey. And I had a lot of journal entries about certain people and certain dates and more about how I was feeling. And I share some of them in the book. And in fact, those were the hardest things for my now husband and my one son to read, because they were some very lonely, dark times. And so I was pretty transparent about that. And so the journals guided me. The only notes that I really kept were more related to my interviews. But my journals and looking is sort of, I think there's a great quote that says you have to look back to know how far you've come. And those journals allowed me to do that.
Oh, that's such a great story, because I think it is a journey. And sometimes when we go through a divorce or we've had a major life transition like that, there are some dark times. And it's not until we really get clear about who we are and who we want to be and how we want to show up in those relationships, and even what kind of relationship we really want to have.
Exactly. I think I became, over that 10-year period, I became a different person. I was very confident in my work life and in my decision making around my professional career, but not very good at, finding someone that was a true partner or a good match. And it really allowed me to do a lot of work and therapy and inner searching to figure out what kind of partner I really wanted, what kind of partner I could be, and to learn so much more about myself. So it really was this amazing 10-year period of self-growth and confidence building and all the things. But there are dark days in that, as you said.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I'm a single gal as well, and I've been married twice. But, a lot of it is, and I've heard the quote too, which I think is fabulous, that you need to become the partner that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And that means doing that inner work, right?
Yes. And my kids, I have 4 kids. 2 I birthed and 2 I was blessed to have through my now husband. But we talk so much about dating, and I'm always saying it's a little cheesy, but you need to be the best you before you can be ready to be with somebody else. And I think that is so true. And sometimes we get so focused on what a good friend of mine calls the Noah's Ark syndrome, which is the need to pair up so quickly. And I've seen my kids do that. And without being thoughtful about who you are and what you need and what you can give, and are you in a place even to have a relationship, or do you have things yourself you need to work on? So I'm always kind of banging into their heads the sort of, you need to be the best you before you can really meet somebody else.
Yeah, and I think I love that. I've never actually heard Noah's Ark syndrome, but it totally makes sense.
I can't take, my friend Bernadette came up with that. I can't take credit for it.
All right, well, we'll make sure she gets credit in the notes. But, the reality is that I think there's a bit of an art to being single as well. And I've been single for a while, but I'm happily single. I mean, certainly looking for someone. But I'm working on myself, and that's a huge part of that journey. But there is something to be said for not feeling incomplete without a partner.
For sure. And that's something I had to get comfortable with too. I will definitely tell you that I got to the place, and weirdly, like pretty much right before I met my now husband, where I had definitely convinced myself I would absolutely rather be alone than be with the wrong person or be with someone who drains me in any way, shape, or form. So I was committed to that. And I was, a young mom, and we had lots of events and things to go to with my kids. And I had to show up and be my own date when everyone else was married and, start to feel good about that. And I always say you are your own best date. So, and if you buy a new outfit, it feels a little bit better. So that's maybe when my whole love of fashion really reached its peak, but it's definitely something about being comfortable about being alone that makes you more attractive, I think. But then I would say, I'd be interested what your thought is on this. The flip side of that is I do think you have to have an open heart and an open mind when, a lot of people come to me for advice now about dating and things. And sometimes I feel like people say they want to meet somebody, but they don't really want to leave their house or they don't want to do new things or try new things or join groups or things like that. And if you're closed off, you are not having like the open heart and open mind that you need to be open to meeting somebody. And I did get to a point where I felt like I have just spent way too much time sitting in bed watching The Bachelorette and eating popcorn to, let someone else into this whole scenario. And I don't know if I'll ever find somebody at this point. But so I do think it's a little bit of a balance of both getting comfortable with yourself, but not so closed off that you really aren't attracting, giving off the vibe you need to meet somebody.
Yeah, and I love that you have in your book, I think it is that, love's not going to find you if you're sitting on the couch, right?
Amen. That's true. Exactly.
Yeah, and well, my thoughts on that are what you just asked me was what I find for me, because I'm a work from home person, I don't go very many places, so I have to make a real conscious effort to go places and be where people are, because I even order my groceries online, so I don't even go to the grocery store. So it's a real conscious effort, and especially when you're looking at the online dating world, behind a computer, we've all gotten so comfortable being behind a screen that you don't, like you say, get those in person, looking someone in the eyes and getting a sense of their body language and all of the little things that create chemistry between two people.
Absolutely. Intentionality is so important. It's interesting. I have a podcast with my 22-year-old called I Love You More, and we talk a lot about generational dating. And it's interesting because those guys are really used to communicating on apps. So they'll actually, even if they see someone live, a lot of what they do is just all virtual, but they're all tired of it. I mean, from my 27-year-old to my 22-year-old and the ones in between, they want to meet people in the wild now. And they're joining running groups and all kinds of things. And I think they're great examples for the rest of us. I don't care if you're 30, 40, 50, 60, find something you like to do and join. I'm also not opposed to the apps. I always say, I like the apps because it's like you wouldn't prep for your big interview. You wouldn't go to your big interview without prepping. And I kind of look at it like practice. You have to have low expectations because the authenticity is not going to be foundational there. But you can vet people, and it just kind of gives you this I'm open to dating vibe. And, just make sure you only have a half hour and a cocktail to meet that person or whatever. But I'm not, opposed either way, whether it's in the wild or, online. But I think it's really just a matter of being intentional, like you said, and being open.
Yeah, and I mean, I did meet my second husband online, and that was way back in the early days, like 25 years ago, when there wasn't. It was really embarrassing, actually, to be online because nobody else was doing it. It was like, you're doing what? Like, you're that desperate? You have to what? But it's not like that anymore. And I think you need a combination of looking and also I think that the dating apps give you clarity as to what you're looking for. I mean, it's very easy for us to be a little bit more shallow where it's looking at pictures and going nope or yes. And a lot of times that doesn't give you really a snapshot of who the person is. But It definitely
Right.
does allow us to read a lot of profiles and go, that's just not going to work for me. And I love what you said earlier, and I think I'm exactly in that place. I would happily rather be alone than with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have all these rules. I don't know if I call them rules at the end, like lessons, I guess what they are in my book. And my number one lesson is don't settle. And that's what I'm pounding into my kids. I don't want them to make the same mistakes that I made. And just because you feel like you want to be paired up or it's time to get married, for me, it was, I really wanted to have kids. I feel like I wanted to be a mom from like when I was 12. I'm not sure, but it was just very natural to me. And, so you just can't settle. You really need to listen to that gut and make sure you're hearing those voices that might be giving you doubt. I mean, I can honestly say when I got married to Will, I didn't have a single doubt in my mind, which really says something.
Well, yeah, and practice makes perfect, right? So the more you get out there, and I think what you did, having that, open mind and saying, I'm just going to go and I'm going to be with a bunch of different people and I'm going to see what feels good and I'm going to see what doesn't feel good and I'm going to get really clear about what I want. And I think that's a super important way to find your own lane of what you're looking for.
Definitely. I learned so much. I mean, a lot of the dates were there was about 55 guys. There was a handful of guys that I did date, repeatedly. So one for 6 months, another one for 3 months, but most of my dates were one day, like in and out. And I will say that I am one of those people who draws conclusions quickly on people for good or for bad. And I was not the person who was going to go on a second date if I knew there wasn't a connection there. And I would have girlfriends saying to me, like, just try it again. They'd fix me up and I would be like, you go try it again. I'm not trying it again, and I would be very transparent with the person that, was asking me out. And I would say, I really enjoyed meeting you, but I don't think we're a match. And that's what I counsel my kids. This whole ghosting thing is ridiculous. You should just be honest about what's going on and whether it works or not. And there was times when I was hoping someone was going to ask me out again and I never heard from them or whatever. So it went both ways, of course, but I did learn a lot. And I learned, I needed someone to respect my career, not someone who would feel threatened by that. I had people that, people were saying, oh, find somebody with no kids. That's what you need. And what I found out is the people with no kids had no idea what I was going through. And talking to fathers of children were the ones that really connected. So it was like that kind of my journey gave me so much more clarity of what will work and what wouldn't.
Yeah, and I agree with that as for myself as well. I find that, being a mom myself, and that I was wanting to be a mom all my life as well. And that's a really, probably the biggest joy of my whole life.
Agreed.
But in that case, I have personally found, and I'm not saying people without kids certainly don't have any kind of empathy, because that's definitely not true. But I have found for me that I tend to gravitate more towards people who have been parents as well, because they tend to have similar, values, I guess, is probably part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like if a guy is also a single parent and an active single parent, I felt like we were sharing a lot of our same challenges, and that felt supportive. It's also complicated. Merging two families was very complicated for us. We had to be also very intentional, very, not push certain things. I mean, we're so blessed. Our kids are so close. Two of the kids, one of mine, one of Will's, are literally best friends and talk every day. I mean, beyond blessed and how that all worked out. But it was a very thoughtful, intentional process. So when you get to a certain age where you're dating and, someone's a parent and things like that, you're taking on a lot more than the other person. I needed someone at least to make sure they were taking on, my entire family, which, was me and my two kids at the time. So that's an important thing to think about when you're dating.
And I do think that there is some resilience and some, what's the word I'm looking for? Some real growth that happens when you do have to parent as a single parent, because you have to learn how to be mom and dad in certain moments. And I think that helps you to grow as a human being in a really interesting way.
For sure. And I could do a whole separate book on that, to be honest with you. I
Yes.
do think my kids and I talk about this all the time. I actually think my relationship with my kids is extra special because of that. Because I mean, we vacation together, the three. I mean, the amount of time the three of us spent together was ridiculous. I'm sure they wish they had some alternatives, but it definitely did take a village, and we had lots of people that loved us in our lives, but the three of us have a connection that I think is different and in a good way than someone who may have been raised with two parents and have a little bit more stability. So, on that front, but listen, as I've said before, I think I say in the book, I would go through this path again if it led me to where I am right now. And we just learn we have to go on this journey, and it ends where it ends.
Yeah, and I believe my family situation very similar. I have two sons as well, and we are very, very close. And I think it's also because we spent a gazillion hours, doing things together, and I wouldn't take any of that time back at all. No.
I agree.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to our listeners who are maybe give us some tips from your book? I know you have a specific thing called the 3 L's, and I'm curious what that is.
The 3 L's are love lessons learned. And this is what I put at the end of the book. And it's sort of cutting to the chase of, if I take all my research and I take everything I learned on the dates, and then I take my current relationship and kind of mix it all together, what did I learn? One of them, for example, is luck plays a role. I mean, one of my favorite stories to tell is that my husband is actually from Indiana, was in Indiana, working for a real estate corporation in 2009 when the whole market crashed. And they basically closed the entire division he was working for. And he will literally tell you it was like the lowest point of his life. He was the sole breadwinner for his family, married at the time, and had 2 boys. And he didn't know how he was going to support them. The economy was falling apart. So he ends up moving to Cleveland, Ohio, and taking this job as CEO of the Port of Cleveland. And at the time, one of his kids wouldn't even talk to him for 6 months because they didn't want to move schools. And I mean, it was literally, when you look back, like, whether it was the hardest time or not. But if this did not happen, he would not have met the mutual friend of ours that fixed us up, and we would not be together, which seems unheard of in the karmic world that we live in, because, even our kids laugh at what a good match we are. So it's like I always say to my kids, like, when something happens like that, good luck, bad luck, who knows? You don't know right now what that's going to be. There's like an old wives' table that goes through all these things and says, good luck, bad luck, who knows? What turned out to be his worst time turned out to be his best time, because it led us to our life together. And so that's one of the lessons that I learned, is like, you can certainly be intentional, and you can work on being the best you, and you can put yourself out there and all of that, but there is a little bit of luck to the mix.
Yes. And I do think that, and we talk a lot about that here on the podcast, about how sometimes we're thinking we're on the right path, but then we take a bit of a left turn and we think, what the heck? Why am I going this way for some reason? But first, it takes you to where you didn't know you needed to go.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I do think there's some luck and some karma in there for sure too.
I'm a big believer in karma. I'm a big yogi. So I actually, the woman that fixed up my husband and I met through yoga, and the karmic, sort of frequency that goes with that is so important.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I'm sure you've got some little gems that you can give us to take away and maybe implement for ourselves.
Sure. I mean, I would say that one of the number ones is what we talked about, which is have an open heart and an open mind. One of the I feel like you can combine potentially meeting somebody with making yourself the best you. I was trying to think of how to frame that. because, figure out what you like to do. There's so many things now. There's this meetups and all kinds of stuff. And, you can do everything from playing pickleball to go knit somewhere or whatever. And, whatever it is that you like to do, I think will make you feel better to get out to meet more people and could introduce you to other people. And so it works in a variety of ways. And so I just would encourage people to have an open heart and an open mind. The second thing I would say is to really learn to listen to your gut. If I had to go back and tell you what was wrong to me years ago, was I was ignoring my gut. And I think that when we want something badly enough, we let there might be the biggest red flag in front of your face that you could possibly see waving, but you're like flipping it aside. And I think that it is so important to listen to your gut and look at those red flags and think about them and don't ignore them. And so that's like, probably the second thing that I would say. And it's hard, right?
It's huge though.
It's huge. And I've ignored way too many red flags in my life. So tune up your gut is what I would say. Definitely tune up your gut. And then the other thing I would just say is expand your community. So one of the things that I said, I did say join things, but there's something else, which is if you really want to meet somebody, I would tell people, but don't tell, people in your, it's kind of, I know we're not doing video, but there's a visual of your inner circle, and your inner circle only gets you so far. What I realized in my journey is by talking to these people at the time in yoga who I hardly knew, I was expanding my circle wider and wider. And I literally said to my friend Ann, you have to know somebody. Don't you know anybody? And at the time, she said, well, I actually keep seeing this guy and I think of you. And the whole thing came to fruition after that. But I would never have happened if I didn't broaden that circle, which kind of goes back to my first thing about joining things and showing up. But you really have to kind of go out into the community broader and wider. Tell people at work. People might not know your relationship status. They might not know you're interested in dating. People are very careful. And so I think that by sharing, I love to go to cocktail parties and when people volunteer, they know I wrote a book about this now, so it comes a little more easily, but they start volunteering that they're single and I'm already like, have you done this? Let me fix you up. Like, I love that stuff. And you'd be amazed at how many people love fixing people up.
Yeah. And you give people permission to set you up with someone, because quite often somebody doesn't want to be responsible for a bad connection.
And by the way, you will have those. I had so many of them where I was sitting there sipping my wine, wondering how in the world the friend that set us up thought this would work. And it does have to be more thoughtful than like, oh, he's divorced, she's divorced, or whatever. But, people are going to then ask you, what are you looking for? So you have to think about what you're saying, what you would say in response to that. But at the end of the day, the more you tell people that you're open, I think the better your chances are.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think I saw in the book also that you had one that said, don't have too many rules.
That's an important one, actually. And so I'll frame this in how I used them, which I actually had a rule that I would not date somebody more than 5 years older than me. And I would not date somebody who was not divorced for at least a year. And my rationale for the second one was really that divorces are messy and I wanted people to have time to date and do their thing and things like that. So when Anne fixed me up with my husband, both of those rules had to be broken. He is 9.5 years older than me, and he was in the process of a divorce that was taking years. And so they were long separated and everything, but it wasn't quite done. And Anne's just like, trust me. And I did. And it basically said to me, like, don't have rules. Like, you just can't have rules like that. You just have to be open-minded and see what works for you. And rules just limit what you can do. And I literally wouldn't have gone out on the date with my now husband if I followed my own stupid rules. And by the way, they were stupid. I mean, where did I come up with, I'm not dating somebody more than 5 years older than me? I mean, that was so random. Like, what? So it was just, silly. And in fact, what I did at one point I went to Marival with some friends for a birthday, and we were manifesting things, and they said basically like write a list of all the characteristics you wish this person you want in your life would have. And, some of them are silly, but I have a list of 32 things. My husband has every one of them. It's bizarre. But anyways, that's just an aside. But it just goes to show you, like, if I use those all as rules, I would have looked at it differently versus like an aspiration, which is different than a rule.
Absolutely. And I 100% believe in manifesting. And I have a very extensive list. It's actually very, very, very specific, which I'm sure I may not get every single thing. But I think it's important to be very clear about what you're looking for. And
for sure.
And that you are worthy of having what you want. I think that's the other piece. So what other advice would you give someone who's either swinging at the fence a second time or just getting started in terms of being able to know that you're worthy of love?
That's so hard. If you don't think you are, I think you should go to therapy. And I think having self-awareness and self-confidence and knowing that you are worthy to have the love that you deserve, no one should settle. And my grandma, I use it in the book, used to tell me there's a lid for every pot. And I truly believe that. And she also said, let's not make 4 people miserable by having the wrong people. Like, you need the right pot on the right lid kind of thing. So I do believe that there is a lid for every pot. In fact, I think there's multiple lids that fit a pot, frankly, depending on where you are in your life. And I think that the only way to figure out how worthy of love you are is to work through why you feel like you're not. And it actually took me a lot of therapy to get to the bottom of why I could have so much confidence and expectations in my professional life, but not my personal life. And if I didn't do that work, I don't think I'd have the strong relationship that I have now. And, I don't think someone would have said to me, you're not going to let anyone take care of you, because I'm such a strong person and I felt so strong about independence. And I'll be honest, like, having someone take care of me and things is the most beautiful thing in the world. And we take care of each other. It's not one way, but those are the kinds of things that I think you need to work through, probably with some help if you're not there yet.
Yeah, I think that's a really big piece of the puzzle for sure. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been awesome. I will definitely put a link to your book in the bio and the show notes. And I will also put your podcast in there. I think that's
thank you.
Brilliant.
We're actually starting. We only had recorded 4 or 5 episodes, and as you know, I did a cross-country move. So we put it on hold for the summer, but we're starting back up next week, and we're super excited about it. And I have learned a lot about the younger generation, that I think how they're doing things, and I think they're learning from us, and there's a lot we can learn from each other. So I encourage you to listen to I Love You More as well. And Marnie, it's so much fun to talk to you. I know the perfect love is in your future as well.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I think it's brilliant that you're sitting with your kids and having conversations about teaching the younger generation how to find love and how to be worthy of love and how to pick the right partner and not to settle. I think that's brilliant. And if you want, just before we go, to tell people where they can find you on social media if they want to check out your book.
Absolutely. My Instagram is @lovelessons104, and the book is available on Amazon. Love Lessons, 104 Dates and the Journey That Led Me to True Love. And then if you want to find the podcast, it's I Love You More, and it's on Spotify and Apple. And appreciate you so much, Marnie, for having me and for everyone for listening.
I hope you loved today's episode. I hope it inspired you or motivated you in some way to keep going and create your very best life. If you did, would you stop and take 5 minutes to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts? It's the best way for me to know that you're enjoying the show, and it helps other listeners find us as well. And while you're at it, head over to lifeisdelicious.ca and sign up for email updates so you'll get notified every time a new episode drops. And I'll send you a free copy of my ebook, The Midlife Manifesto, inspiring strategies for mastering the 8 most important areas of your life. Sign up today at lifeisdelicious.ca. And if no one has told you today, There's not one person on this planet that is exactly like you. And the world is a better place because you're here. So thank you for being here. I'll be back next week, and I hope you'll join me right here on Life is Delicious.